Welcome to Delenda est Carthago, a curmudgeons.net podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andy.
And I'm your other host, Aaron. We're here to cut through the clutter of some of today's headlines.
This is the People, What a Bunch of Bastards edition. And Aaron and I decided that we were such a big hit and we had at least 2 listeners after 2 episodes that we'd take a month off. And now we're refreshed, relaxed.
We've regrouped.
We've regrouped.
Not that we were very grouped to begin with.
That stupid thing called work got out of the way a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. And now we're back to record tonight. So we got a couple things to talk about.
Before we do that, however,
go ahead.
Let's actually hear what the intro should sound like with the proper accent.
People. What a bunch of bastards.
See, that just sets the tone a lot better.
It sure does. And it's just, I can't agree more.
All right, we'll move right into the first segment here. I'm just going to play you a video. I'm going to play you a video clip on this audio podcast, and you'll have to guess what it is. No, I'm going to play you an audio clip, and then I'm going to get Aaron's spontaneous reaction to this.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
People. What a bunch of bastards.
So I think I've listened to that like 6 or 7 times so far. And every time I hear it, it just grates on me.
It never gets old. It never gets old. Although I did notice this time through 2 keywords, collective.
Collective and private.
But what kills me is these are only private thoughts. It's not that this is the universal belief of parents everywhere who say, yes, this stupid kid is mine, even if I don't want him, he's mine. Right?
They've got this private...
It's just a private feeling. We should get rid of that, and we should let everyone take care of all the children.
You need to have a more collective... See, maybe that's one of the things about this clip that's so shocking to some people, because there's a lot of crap on Facebook, Twitter, and everything about this. It's alarmed all of the so-called conservatives. Maybe it's the use of the word collective, right? It's like a buzzword for them. Yeah. But they hear this all the time from everyone else, and they don't associate it with collective, right?
Right, yes, exactly.
It's just the word.
Well, yeah, okay.
You can say this.
If it was a conservative Southern Republican gentleman calling for the end of cursing and gun talk in rap music.
Yep.
Because the community needs it. As long as we substitute the buzzword and put in our cause.
If we put in a moral cause, right?
Yeah, a perceived moral cause at least.
So perceived, and I skipped ahead. So for those of you who don't know and don't watch MSNBC, which is hopefully everyone listening to this, that was Melissa Harris Perry, the host of Melissa Harris Perry on MSNBC.
Not a long drawn-out title at all.
Not an egotistical title for your show at all. But that was her in one of those 30-second fill-in-the-gap because we didn't sell all of our airtime on MSNBC because we're going broke and no one watches this channel anymore, or ever did. But if you ever have seen them, there's been ones from Larry O'Donnell talking about how the GI Bill and Social Security are, crucial to life in the universe, and Big Ed Head talking about who knows what. So this is just the next in the series. But there's a couple interesting things. One is this is what she decides to talk about in her clip. So the 2 options I can come up with are either they hit start on the camera and said go, and this is the first thing that comes out of her mouth, or somebody wrote this as a script. I'm not sure which one's worse.
Both. Both are worse.
They're both worse.
There's no good. There can be no. This is like in baseball. They talk about the 3 true outcomes, right? So the guy either strikes out, or I'm sorry, the 2. Wow, I didn't get that right. The 2 true outcomes. You either hit a home run or you strike out. Oh, or get a walk. That's what it was. There's no in between for some.
How many options are there in baseball?
No.
Gosh.
This is for power hitters. Okay, so they hit a home run, they strike out, or they take a walk.
This is why I don't watch baseball.
If you knew anything, you would. Either way, it's the same idea with this. It's like, we can have you say whatever we want because we're just filling dead air. Or we can have you say whatever you want because really we don't have anything that we hold to as any sort of foundation. Or 3, I don't care.
Nobody cares.
Exactly. So,
real quick, I'll give you a rundown here on her. She's 39, this Melissa Harris Perry. She's 39. Her education, she's got 3 major, 1 minor. I can't even look at the list. It's ridiculous. She's got a BA in English, which is just ridiculous. I don't know who goes to school for English.
An idiot would go to school for English.
BA in English from Wake Forest. A PhD in poli-sci from Duke.
That's the worst thing ever.
It's the worst thing ever. Nah, maybe not. The next one is an honorary doctorate from Meadville Lombard Theological School. So they don't even have the courtesy to call themselves like a university or an institute or something. And then she tried but failed or got tired of it. She was an MDiv student at Union Theological Seminary, which is like being, I don't know, a doctoral student at
Waco State.
Where? Yeah, exactly. And while she was at Union, she was mentored by Maya Angelou. And Aaron thinks that it's terrible for me to say that, but for some reason I feel like it has a bearing on her character.
Well, sitting here thinking about this, I just realized the theological school is like one step below a seminary must be. It's like the junior college.
I'm thinking it's probably on par.
No,
we're talking about Union Theological Seminary here, so I'm thinking they're probably about equal. If not, maybe Meadville might be a little higher. Maybe that's cynical, but
it's just a school. It's where you don't send your kids.
That's where I don't send my kids. That's for sure. I got nothing else to say about this. No. It's just, I guess, a sign of the times. You can now get away with saying collectivist and your children or my children are not your children. And the worst you'll get is a little bit of hate mail on Facebook.
Lest anyone judge us more than you're already judging us. Of course she can have her own opinion. And I don't care that she spouts it on television. Unlike half the world anymore, I still think that you should be able to say whatever idiotic thing comes out of your face.
I especially want you to say every idiotic thing, because then I'll know what you're thinking, and I won't be surprised later.
Better the devil you know.
Exactly. Speaking of idiots, Aaron wants to talk about intellectual property and the libertarian, and the so-called libertarian movement, I'll call it.
Yes, the libertarian... Well, the one thing
so-called
the libertarians have... The one thing so-called libertarians have going for them at this point is that almost everyone says they are very civil and have good debates. Recently, Messieurs Wenzel and Kinsella, yes, that was an allusion to the rudeness of the French. Sorry, guys. Had a debate that it was very...
I'm going to stop you. Hang on, I'm going to stop you right there. You used the word debate.
Oh, you're right. I apologize. They had a wrestling match. A verbal spar.
I'll allow it.
Verbal sparring occurred between the two of them. Childish foolishness, mostly. And apparently, I was guessing earlier that this was like an hour and a half long. Then Andy reminded me that it's 2.5 hours of this nonsense. The basic premises on Kinsella's side is there's no intellectual property right that can be backed up any other way but by the force of a central government. Wenzel, on the other hand, believes in some sort of, I'm going to screw it up again. I'm going to say manufactured, and it's not manufactured rights.
It's
a manufactured theory of
of designed rights.
Designed rights. I don't have a whole lot to say about designed rights. As far as I can tell, Wenzel's side of the argument consists of, I agree with what I said yesterday and the day before. And
I agree with myself.
Yes, exactly. He also does make a great point of saying, oh, look, here's a picture of a stop sign. I'm going to destroy Kinsella with this in the debate.
So for anybody who didn't for anybody who didn't listen to the 2.5 hours because you have a life, I did listen to it because I don't.
You were traveling to work. At least give yourself an edge.
I was traveling, so it was either sit in the airport and watch the TSA molest people or listen to Robert Wenzel. So, lesser of two evils. So I did listen to the whole thing.
Did you really just say that phrase? Anarchists do not believe in the lesser of two evils.
Yeah. All right, you got me. Although it's an intellectual thought, so I own that, and you can't take it from me. Wenzel. Anyway. So I listened to the whole thing. You could tell from the very beginning that it was not going to be a debate. And I don't know why Kinsella decided to do this with no moderator.
This was the best point out of the entire thing was when you said to me, I believe it was in an email. Oh, no, I believe it was on the blog, actually, when you said, I can't believe Kinsella did this without a moderator. And that's the best point that came out of this whole thing. So
Wenzel's a jerk, right? Kinsella, as you point out, slightly less so. Neither of them could, if Kinsella had any, manners about him, he would have just dismissed himself after, the first 10, 15 minutes and said, Bob, this isn't productive. We're not getting anywhere. I'll be
in it.
I'll be happy to come back when, we can have a reasoned debate or maybe a moderator. But he went on to it and continued for 2.5 hours. So
it was like the old time boxing matches between two heavyweights. It was round 30 and they were bloodied and dying. But it
was like they weren't even hitting each other. It was just like swinging and swinging and then pointing at the other guy going, hey, I got you. So it made no sense. I'm on Kinsella's side already, but even I can see that he did a terrible job of, no matter what he actually said, he did a terrible job because of how he presented himself, right? He looks like a jerk.
Yeah.
So the whole point of anti-intellectual property looks like, you're just a fool if you can believe that. So and Wenzel's capitalizing on this now because he suckered, he trolled Kinsella in. He got him to stay on the phone for 2.5 hours, and now he's got all this ammo he can use. And he's
post after post.
Post after post.
Oh, today it's Steve. Tomorrow it'll be Norman. The next day it'll be Stephan. The next day it'll be...
He's used every variation of his name, his initials, and just...
Just childish behavior.
Yes, absolutely. So for somebody you would... And probably the worst part for me is... I sent Aaron a note about this a few weeks ago. I had never seen a picture of Wenzel. I didn't really care. But then he shows up at the Mises Institute about, 3 weeks ago?
With a keynote speech.
A keynote speech, which was excellent. Really good speech, right? About Soviet Union and everything. And I'm like, oh, all right. That's cool. And then he does this debate, and it's like, cannot be the same person. I don't even, how can you go from reasoned discussion, logic about, any topic, including economics, which he's pretty good on, very good to this just almost irrational, I wrote a word down on a piece of paper, and now I own it, and I can tell you and everyone else in the world what they can do with it. It makes no sense at all.
These 3 notes played in this sequence
it's
will be forever a tribute to my creativity.
And to Kinsella's credit, the one thing that he did continue to do throughout the feces throwing was ask Wenzel, what is your theory? You're attacking mine, fine. Let's say I'm totally wrong. Tell me your basis. Tell me your thoughts. Give me a logical layout. And he refused to do it because there is none for intellectual property. There's nothing other than manufactured or designed rights that have any bearing on intellectual property.
Are you saying that... did you just quote me? I believe you did. You just said manufactured
maybe
rights.
Accidentally.
Didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I did.
That's what this really is. No. You can say designed... I'm sorry, not you, but Wenzel can say 1,000,000 times over the word designed rights. But really, when it comes down to it, it is manufactured rights. It
is manufactured, and it's whatever he or whoever else wants to manufacture them. And And the scarier part is if you can manufacture them,
Why?
you can unmanufacture them.
Why can't the government?
Why can't the government? Yeah, why are you different?
Yeah.
So
Well, okay, so I want to go back to your point about how he went from, I shouldn't say he went from, but he appears to have gone from a rational man to a completely irrational man. I think there's one piece of evidence that I have been overlooking, and I realized it today. I didn't realize before somehow that he actually worships Murray Rothbard.
Oh, so I did realize that before this debate, and I forget when it was. But, I realized it about Jeff Tucker.
Yes.
So his little spat with Jeff Tucker
right.
about laissez-faire books and why isn't Murray Rothbard at the top of the list and all that crap.
Yeah.
I think that is really more about his Rothbard worship than about the intellectual property.
Yeah, well, certainly. No, I guess what I'm saying is
mixed
this is
the
another
two together.
Irrational behavior.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
I think the Libertarian Party has, to a large degree, become, oh, that's just the Ron Paul crowd. Or, oh, that's just the, whatever you want to say. Certainly we have heroes. There's nothing wrong with, saying, Mises had great ideas. And Rothbard had great ideas.
Yeah,
but
there's certainly
still
a few people that have had big impacts. They've had a lot of big thoughts, and they're, you can draw a lot from what they've said. But you're right. He's taken it to a whole other level. And so other people do this. You're right. With Ron Paul. Even Kinsella does this with Hoppe, right?
Oh, sure.
I haven't read every word that Hoppe has said. He's great, but I'm sure that he's made errors.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, yeah, the Rothbard worship is a little sickening. So, all that to say, just wait for my book on anti-intellectual property, because it'll come out probably the same day that Wenzel's does, which is never. So... And I'll probably get a bunch of hate mail from Wenzel for that, because he hates to be challenged.
Well,
anyway,
that can be nothing but good for our lowly existence.
The wrath of Wenzel?
Yes. Stephan Kinsella will at least like us.
You're right. It's really interesting that his blog, and I'll give him credit for this, he publishes every comment, I guess unless there's profanity or really something like that. But he publishes stuff on his blog, the comments that are against him. So I will credit him with that. I've written stuff critical, and 2 minutes later it's published. So he's not, and that may just show how deluded he is, that he thinks that no matter what anybody says, he's
a Teflon man.
He's Teflon, and he's found the truth already, the only one, right? So it doesn't matter what anybody else says, he's good to go.
Property rights manufactured by Rothbard will set us all free.
Apparently. and I hate to prolong this, but let me just say one more thing. that any sane person's reading of Rothbard on particularly the stuff that Kinsella cites is vague at best. And, obviously Rothbard did not delve into this. And, that's it. I'll leave it there.
Yes.
It's a crazy, ridiculous argument for him to make, and even if he was wrong, I would be willing to listen to him if he would just stop being such a jerk about it. All right. We won't mention his name anymore. So this piece comes from Glenn Greenwald, one of my favorite journalists, one of the only journalists left alive, I think, today. And he says, there's something distinctively creepy in a Roman sort of way about this mandated ritual that our political leaders must be heralded and consecrated as saints upon death. So I won't read the whole paragraph to you, but I'll let Aaron continue here about who he's talking about, which is probably obvious to most of you.
Well, Mags, my favorite of all.
I thought it was Maggie.
Well, and it was Maggie until I got even more familiar with her. Now it's Mags. Margaret Thatcher, of course, died recently, and the misquote from the Greek, to speak no ill of the dead, really should read, speak nothing that is untrue about the dead. I have a few true things I'd like to share with you about Maggie Thatcher that a lot of people have disregarded over the years. Unfortunately, I have these in kind of an odd order. I want to start later on in the list. You're welcome, Andy. The first thing is Ronald Reagan. For some reason, Maggie Thatcher has been tied to this con man's coattails, essentially since he was first elected. Rothbard. This is like, we should have called this the Rothbard worship episode. I forgot that I had done this. But Rothbard had this great thing to say about Reagan and Thatcher. He said, like Mrs. Thatcher in England, the president is giving us all the fiery and hard-hitting economic libertarian rhetoric, but none of the substance. I'm not going to continue on that, as I know we're running over. But Reagan and Thatcher did have this knack for always making you think that they shared your beliefs about limited size of government. Of course, back then I would have bought into those in a heartbeat before I saw the light. And the things that make us see the light are things like Mrs. Thatcher's poll tax. And again, strangely enough, Rothbard had a lot to say about this at the time.
This is the Rothbard
really is.
Episode.
He said, speaking of Maggie's poll tax, there are several deep flaws in the new tax. In the first place, it's still not neutral to the market, since market prices are paid voluntarily by the consumer purchasing the good or service, whereas a tax or charge is levied coercively on each person, even if the value of the service of government to that person is far less than the charge. Not only that, but it is charge levied on a person's very existence, and the person must often be hunted down at great expense to be forced to pay the tax. Charging a man for his very existence, Rothbard goes on, seems to imply that government owns all of its subjects' body and soul. In that direction, I have a quote from Maggie herself about her and the entire British Empire's adventure in the Falkland Islands. She said, "We have ceased to be a nation in retreat. We have instead a newfound confidence, born in the economic battles at home and tested and found true 8,000 miles away." 8,000 miles away. Emphasis mine. And so today, we can rejoice at our success in the Falklands and take pride in the achievement of the men and women of our task force. But we do so not as some flickering of a flame which must soon be dead. No, we rejoice that Britain has rekindled that spirit, which has fired her for generations past, and which today has begun to burn as brightly as before. Britain found herself again in the South Atlantic, and will not look back from the victory she has won.
We could probably take a whole episode on that paragraph right there. So let me throw out one that I see right away. If we go back to the very beginning of this episode with the MSNBC collectivist and the use of the we and the our, yes. It's right in there, right? It's the same wording. It's, what does she say? We can rejoice at our success.
Yes, as if Maggie herself went and fought on the battlefield.
Who is the we? Who is the our? You know, I'm sure, I have no doubt that in every time and place there are people standing outside of the government going, I disagree, and I have no intention of supporting you. So the we is a selective we at best.
Later on, the comment, Britain found herself again in the South Atlantic, acting as if they distinguished themselves the first time around.
So unlike the last episode, I did some research for this and found that the Falklands have been in contention since at least the early 1600s. Some people say even earlier than that, 1700s. Some people say even 1600s. But this was not like all of a sudden in 1982, Argentina decided to invade these little islands and take them back. They've been in contention for at least 150 years.
Yeah.
And the other question I had was, did anybody ask the people that live on that island whether they wanted to be ruled over by British people or by Argentinians?
Why would they bother to ask?
The whole narrative is,
Andy, we decided that this was the best decision for everyone.
We did, but the whole narrative is they have to be ruled over by one or the other, right?
Yeah.
They're either Argentinian or they're British. They can't be Falklanders.
Yep.
right? And they can't decide that, screw you both, we don't need either of you, we're doing just fine on our own.
Exactly. This sort of petty patriotism, it's just the lowest common denominator. That's the only appeal it can have.
Which, going back to Reagan, is in lockstep, right?
Yeah.
All you need is an enemy.
Right.
In the Falklands, we're fighting against Argentina again.
Yeah.
Right?
Those evil Argentinians.
Those evil Soviets, those evil Argentinians, we just need an enemy.
We've always been at war with Argentina.
Exactly. And quite literally, that's true.
Pretty much true. I have one final bad thing that I want to inform you about as regards Mrs. Thatcher. This is about her, in my opinion, lack of perspective about Northern Ireland. But these quotes that I'm about to read come from the BBC, so this is not entirely me editorializing over this. The BBC says, she was always ready to point out that the official title of the party she led was Conservative and Unionist, just as she was herself. This was a woman to whom Northern Ireland was every bit as British as her Finchley constituency. It was the hunger strike in 1981 which defined her attitude toward Republican violence. Inside the Maze prison located near Lisburn in County Antrim, Republican paramilitary prisoners were engaged in a long campaign to secure a set of privileges which would in effect have given them prisoner of war status. It was a dispute that went to the heart of the Troubles. Were imprisoned members of the IRA terrorist murderers or guerrilla fighters whose actions in pursuit of their cause were legitimate? Margaret Thatcher was in no doubt. Crime is crime is crime. It is not political, she said, as the Republican prisoners one by one starved themselves to death, apparently for crimes. Mrs. Thatcher's belief in the use of tough tactics never wavered. In 1988, she introduced a broadcasting ban which made it illegal to broadcast the views of the likes of Sinn Féin, to deny terrorists the oxygen, publicity on which they thrive. What's interesting to me is that, A, these men were willing to starve themselves to death for something that wasn't political, that wasn't a firmly held belief. It was just some crime they wanted to commit.
Like mugging someone.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The other day I stole a Kit Kat bar, and you threw me in jail, and now I'm going to starve myself to death with it.
I'll draw a quick parallel to what's currently going on in Guantanamo Bay,
yes,
where the prisoners who have no hope of ever being released or even tried are doing the exact same thing, starving themselves to death.
Exactly. Being force-fed through IV tubes.
Yep.
In order to save face for the administration, who promised how many times that they would close this thing within the first year of his presidency.
Yep, absolutely.
You can't believe what you hear. That's for sure. What I thought was great about these two things were the crime is crime is crime. It is not political. And then turned around and in 1988, 7 years later, you're not allowed to broadcast anything, particularly political views, because, terrorist views.
The part that struck me when I read what you posted here was about her. She was in no doubt. The resolution.
Yeah.
That's like it's like a call to arms for quote unquote conservatives, right? I think it's even in V for Vendetta. I think we must be strong. We must stay the course and all that kind of crap about. It's really the rhetoric of our morals. Don't think about what they are, but we're sticking to them, and that's what gives us the right to do whatever we want to do, right? You better be behind us because we are in no doubt about the fact that we're right.
Wasn't it the CIA operative founder of National Review that said something about standing athwart history and yelling stop? You're right. It's that idea that we can't, anything outside of our opinion, anything outside of our comfort is detritus.
Yeah, and you can never slow down to think.
Oh.
Because you can't give anybody an inch to get in. We know what we're doing is right. Don't stop to question it. Because that will just let those people, whoever they are, let them gain ground on us.
Yeah.
It's I don't even know what the word is. It's sickening. It's propagandizing. There's so many things to describe it.
It's bankrupt.
It's bankrupt. But continue and finish with your one good thing about mags.
Yes, there is one thing. I read this on the Daily Bell. I would like to. I actually brought this up because I wanted to give a shout out to those guys anyway, doing yeoman's work over there. They were responding. It was a staff report, I believe, responding to a memorial piece that Sir Harold Evans. I know you don't know who that is. Just think of him as Tina Brown's husband. Now you might know who that is. He wrote this memorial, and the staff report responded to it, saying, "Reading this rancid evaluation of Thatcher's career, one is reminded that the bankers booted her out of office because she couldn't bring herself to endorse the European Union. That doesn't feature in Evans's cautious appraisal of Thatcher's life, which reads, metaphorically speaking, like a man composing on keys filled with dynamite."
I laughed so hard when I read that last line.
It's just beautiful. It's absolutely somebody with an English degree wrote that.
I wish I could. Yeah, no, I don't think so. I wish I could write that way. If he had gone for an English degree, he wouldn't have written that. But it's so true, though. And what Greenwald says at the beginning, about how we can never speak ill of anyone, but and he makes the further point in his really good article that the other side doesn't have any problem with using the opportunity to speak nothing but good about all of her policies and everything she ever did. So,
yeah.
But you're evil and horrible if you say anything bad about any of her policies or anything she ever did.
Right.
And I think that last line is perfect, and how even, and it's maybe even especially Christians and high-profile Christians are treating her. And I know you won't know this, Aaron, because you don't have the patience of Job like I do to listen to Al Mohler, but I listened to his podcast, and for the past, since she died, literally the minute, he's been podcasting about her, and it's very strange, actually, because he hasn't so much come out and said he agrees with or endorses, but it's that reverence for the quote-unquote conservative values and dignity and the staunchness and all of that stuff. It's just sickening because there's no analysis of any of the stuff that you just read about, right? Nothing about the Falklands, nothing about the poll tax.
And
it's just
the sad part is this is a minuscule amount of the horrible things this woman did.
It's a minuscule amount, and Al Mohler has a huge audience to talk to that are just taking this in as we should be, and I don't celebrate anybody's death, but we should just accept everything we're hearing about Thatcher, and it's really not about Thatcher. It's really about the ideas and what she represents.
Oh, yeah.
That we're talking about here. It could be anybody, It doesn't have to be a British woman who was prime minister. It's the ideas, but they cannot bring themselves to criticize that whole aura of quote-unquote conservatism, whatever that means, and loving your country, which really to them means loving your government. And that's it. And this thing about the European Union is probably, like you said, the best thing you can say about her.
Yeah.
Is that she couldn't bring herself to join the EU.
This is...
But,
right. This isn't a woman who rolled back gun laws in Britain. No, she was fine with them. It's not someone who did these... The one other thing you could say is that she privatized a lot of stuff. Well, okay. Britain was mercantilist for how long? Privatization by itself doesn't really mean a whole lot when the government's still got their hands in it.
It's a relative thing for sure.
Exactly.
I mean, Mueller compares it to so she rolled back some of the taxes, so they went from being taxed at 40% to 30%.
Right.
Okay, that's good that they stopped stealing as much, but you're basically saying that's an acceptable level of theft.
Right. Well, and she did a lot of the same things as Reagan. She took the money from the tax rolls coming in and supposedly, quote-unquote, gave it back to the people. But they turned around and spent money like it was, spent currency like it was water.
Yep.
And went into huge deficits.
Yeah, it's an interesting, it's probably like a 3-hour show to talk about Thatcher, but yeah. I think it's less about her and more about the ideas and how ideas have consequences,
sure.
as Mueller is fond of saying, but he doesn't understand what he's actually talking about when he says it.
Yeah. And I have to say, in the immortal words of Bill Cosby, it's one of those I told you that story to tell you this one. Winston Churchill was just as bad. Wake up, people.
Yep. We'll do another show about Winston Churchill sometime. When he dies, we'll do a show about him.
He lives on in the hearts and memories. True Britons everywhere.
Of Thatcherites everywhere. Thanks for listening. You can find us at our website, curmudgeons.net, and on Facebook and Twitter. Drop us a note with suggestions, links, or show ideas, and remember to share the podcast with your friends. We'll be back in 2 weeks. If Kim Jong-un gets bored with Call of Duty and decides to nuke the Falklands, we'll cover it live. Until then, spit on your hands and hoist the black flag.